So a few years back, when me and my brother went to Iceland with some friends and saw the partial eclipse from Reykjavik, it was probably about a 98%, so we were saying about 2% of the sun. And that was the first time we saw an eclipse like in person. I actually saw it other than like in school when we'd get out and get those papers. You'd look at a little shadow, and so that was super neat. But actually seeing that in person, seeing that 2% little crescent was amazing. So I even tried to take pictures with my camera. I even was one of those people that was holding the glasses like over the front of the lens, trying to make sure to get that shot like through the lens, through the little bitty glasses, and trying to get something usable. I get a couple of interesting looking pictures, but nothing like terribly great out of it. So that was back in 2015. So then when the 2017 eclipse was coming around, I was like, I've got to be really prepared for this. So I got some solar film. I even made some solar filters for my camera and a friend's camera, and made all his plans. Got down to Tennessee, made sure to find a spot that I could get into, get some decent pictures of, right on the center line. And it was pretty spectacular. The only problem was I had tried to sort of cheat my focal range a little bit, and I had ended up trying to use a 500 millimeter mirror lens instead of my 300 millimeter telephoto, because I just wanted that extra reach. After the fact, I realized that mirror lens was not focusing correctly. So in hindsight, it probably would have been better off if I had used my 300 millimeter instead. I would have gotten slightly crisper pictures. It was still neat. You can still see a lot of stuff in the pictures. So you can see some of the solar flares, the prominences sticking off the side. It's really cool. It's just not crisp, not focused very well at all. Then the next eclipse that I had a chance at was in 2020. There was an annular over Canada, and the best place to see it from the States, because Canada was locked down, was on the shore of Huron, up on the eastern edge of Michigan. So I went up there and took my glasses with me, and I think I took the solar filters, but since it was going to be on the horizon, it wasn't going to be as big of a deal. There's a lot more atmosphere down there, and you can get away with taking pictures of it and looking at it with your eyes, because it's still going through all that air and all that stuff down near the atmosphere. So when I got up there the night before, did some Milky Way stuff because it was supposed to be clear, just to make sure I was going to be there ready to go first thing in the morning. The eclipse was going to occur and going to be visible from the shore of Huron, right above the horizon, that first 1.5 degrees right above the horizon, and it was going to be about an 80% eclipse. So there's going to be a small little crescent coming up right over the horizon. I had planned to take a picture of that from a beach. It has happened to line up with the old lighthouse looking straight across from the beach, and the crescent would have been like right over the top of that lighthouse. It would have been a pretty phenomenal picture. But when we woke up that morning, the only part of the sky that had clouds was that 1.5 degrees above the horizon. So I was a little bit bummed out. You could see the brightness where the sun was coming up to the horizon, but you couldn't see the sun until it cleared the clouds. So that was a little bit of a bummer. I still got a half usable picture from it. It was still super cool. My buddy took his son up there with him, and it's just a great experience if you've never seen an eclipse to actually witness that in person. Then this year, coming along the annular eclipse that was going across from Washington down through Texas, I decided I'm going to get out there at the very least with my newer setup, with my actual I've got tracking mounts, and I've got decent telephoto. I've got the 1.4 extender. I decided I'm going to use this as a practice run to make sure that I've got all this stuff figured out for the total eclipse that's coming through in April. It was going over a couple of big cities that had airports. So why not fly out to the airport, step outside the airport, take my pictures, watch the eclipse, walk back into the airport, get on a plane and fly home. It's a pretty easy, convenient way to do it. There were a couple of airports it was going over. And while I was looking at the historical data on the eclipse map, Albuquerque was historically cloudy only 26% of the time. That airport was maybe 5 miles off the center line. Well, as the forecasts started coming out, Albuquerque was looking like 50 to 60% cloudy for Saturday morning. Every day the forecast started getting better and better and better. So once I decided to fully commit to going to Albuquerque, I had to then try to figure out how to get my camera, my 1.4 extender, my tracking mount, so I didn't have to keep readjusting the tripod and re-aiming at the sun just to keep it in frame the whole time to make it easier. And then my very sturdy tripod. So I had originally come up with a filter box to put on the front of my lens, and then realized as I was trying to pack that this wasn't going to fit very well into my camera bag with everything else without potentially damaging, wrinkling, scratching the filter itself. And I couldn't quite figure out a good way to get this into there. So I sat down last night and tried to think of other ways I could possibly get the filter into the camera bag in a reasonably safe way for the filter itself without having to compromise and take extra stuff with me. And I remembered that I had a bunch of filter rings, and so I had 177 to 82 millimeter, and so the plan was then I was just going to take this and cut the filter paper to the size of this, and then put it inside another like a UV filter, and that way it would be protected, at least inside this, and I could put it on the camera that way. And then I realized I actually had a second 77 millimeter UV filter. So I put my UV filter down, cut it to size, and then sandwiched the filter paper right in between both sets or both UV filters. So it is completely protected with glass on both sides, no way to damage it, and it worked out great. Unfortunately, I had to cannibalize my previous filter from the trip in 2017 from my buddy's camera lens, which was a little bit bigger than mine, but it served its purpose, and now I have a really slick way to have the filter mounted in there for the lens in a way that doesn't damage and is very convenient. I can put this into a little filter case and take with me, and no problems with that. So with the flights, it was actually going to be a really close call. The plane was landing in Albuquerque at 9:52 in the morning, and the totality started at about 10:30, lasting till about 10:34, and then it was going right back to back into the airport. My flight was at noon, and then I was going to fly home again. So it was cutting it really close. I was worried about getting flight delays. Hopefully there's no issues with that, getting into the airport, getting right back out, no delays getting off the plane, and then it should be a nice day. When I got on the plane to fly to Albuquerque, the flight was almost empty from Chicago to Albuquerque, as I think nearly everybody had an entire row to themselves, which was great. Made it really easy to switch around at the side of the plane in case you wanted to, or in a lot of cases, people that were all the way in the back got moved all the way up to the front of the plane. So I ended up sitting in row 8, so I was right up at the front, easy to get out. The guy on the walk into the plane behind me was also doing the same thing I was doing, except for he was just going to look at the eclipse. He didn't have any cameras or anything else with him. He was just going to watch it. So I wasn't the only one crazy enough to get on a plane, fly to the other side of the country to watch an eclipse, to turn around and fly right back. It was a couple other guys doing the same thing. He was flying in a little bit early just to watch the eclipse. He was coming, I guess there was a balloon festival in Albuquerque this weekend as well. So all of us walked on out to the airport. Out of the airport, walked across to the parking garage, and we got on to the top of the parking garage and just started watching the eclipse from there. Unfortunately, I forgot how bouncy parking garages can be. So a lot of my pictures were just kind of like, if I was zoomed all the way in and I stepped next to the camera, I could watch it kind of bouncing a little bit. So in hindsight, I should have found a more solid ground to set up my camera and take my pictures from. So Arthur and Jesse were pretty cool guys. We exchanged phone numbers and shared pictures back and forth with each other. I still haven't gotten my pictures gone through yet. I just barely copied them off of the camera. I didn't get home until 10:30 that night, and then I turned around and had another art show, or a second day of an art show that I had skipped the first day of to fly out. So I've been super busy. Then I got home last night, got unpacked from that, got up this morning for work. So I am going to get those gone through this afternoon, hopefully. Put this video together real quick. Unfortunately, at the airport, it was incredibly busy. There were people everywhere trying to take pictures of the eclipse, trying to watch the eclipse. Just walking out of the airport, every time there was a window, you'd see all these people with their glasses kind of just looking up at it. So like, hey, it started before we landed, at least the partial had. And there were just people everywhere. I wanted to take some videos while I was setting the stuff up, explaining what I was doing, but there was just so many people. I just didn't take as many pictures as I wanted to because I was busy enjoying the experience. Talking with Arthur and Jesse, there was another couple that showed up, and she had a strainer. And my goodness, that strainer was amazing. I'm sure you've seen pictures of people that took a strainer and looked at the shadows the eclipse generates from the strainer, and that is super cool. You just get all these little patterns on the ground. Especially during totality, there were a bunch of little circles on the ground that were popping up that just looked absolutely amazing. I didn't get a video of that. I really wanted to. I didn't think about it at the time. I was just so wrapped up in watching the eclipse. It was really cool. Didn't get quite as many pictures, and for some reason, I didn't take a picture in the middle of totality. I've got a picture at the beginning of totality. I've got a picture towards the end of totality, but I didn't get one dead in the middle. So I apologize for that one. I was just wrapped up in the moment, enjoying the whole scene. So maybe next time I will actually set a timer and take pictures every so often, no matter what. Just timer goes off on the phone, I click the shutter, is what I should be doing next time. Again, that's why I took this trip. It was a learning experience, so that I would figure out what I needed to do for next time and be able to get that all figured out ahead of time. So I've got a checklist, I've got everything sorted out, and I know what I should be doing and when. So I'm not going to miss anything during the totality in the April eclipse.